Hey, my name is Jeff Johnson. I'm the owner of the Johnson team, and we do a lot of transactions. We will do close to 400 just this year, and have been similar to that in the last couple of years. And because of that, we get to see a lot of good, a lot of bad. We know what's going on out there. And one of the things we're realizing is a lot of buyers don't know what the inspection process is for. And we've been also seeing that I think a lot of sellers don't know what to expect when a buyer goes in and does an inspection on their home. So this is kind of more from the buyer perspective, but if you're a seller, this could also help you realize what the buyer's going to be thinking when they come in and what they're going to be expecting. Okay, so here's what we're going to be looking at today. First of all, what is the home inspection? Like, what does that process look like? How do I find an inspector, and what am I looking for in an inspector? What do the reports look like? Like, how do I know if I'm getting the right report? How do I read the report? What's an inspector supposed to do? Like, are they supposed to be specific? Like, making sure you get someone who's willing to get specific. What do they cost? How long does it take? What do I do once I get the report, and how do I negotiate with the seller? Those are going to be all the points that we hit on. It's kind of long, it's about 12 minutes, but we get into detail on each of these things. So, make sure to comment below if you have any questions at all. So what is an inspection? We'll start real basic. And an inspection is the opportunity for the buyer to know what they're walking into. So a lot of times buyers are not an expert. They're not contractors. They're not inspectors. They're not electricians. They're not plumbers. So they walk through the house and they're looking at the surface of the house. They're like, does this fit my needs? You know, can my couch go here? Can my TV fit there? Will it fit my kids? You know, can I put 3 beds in this room? Does it have a master bath? Like, those are the things they're looking at. Does it have views out the back? Most buyers don't know how to look beyond the surface, nor should they, because they're not an expert in it. So this is your chance to know what you're walking into. Now, as a buyer, you should know that almost every house is going to have problems. So a good inspector is going to find you a list of things that probably the seller didn't know about. Most of them are going to be minor. And a lot of times, if you walk into it knowing that, and you're like, okay, for the price I paid, I was expecting to have some problems. We're good. Let's move forward. Now you know what you're buying for the price you're buying it for. However, if you find something major or something unexpected, like the roof is bad, or the furnace is going to go out, or there's plumbing problems, you can go back to the seller and say, hey, we need you to fix these things. There's a good chance the seller didn't know about them, and the seller's going to be like, oh, you're right. I didn't advertise that. I didn't disclose that. So that wasn't what you thought you were getting when you put in your offer. So a lot of times then the seller will cover it. If it's minor cosmetic stuff, things like that are not a big deal, the seller might be like, no, we had 2 other offers waiting. Like, we're not going to fix this. So you just got to know there's a good chance, especially in this market, that the seller might not fix minor things. If it's a major thing that they didn't disclose, there's a good chance they will. So how do you find an inspector? It's another question that we get asked even more than what is an inspection. So there's really not a super good way to find an inspector unless you have an agent that you trust. So if you have an agent that does a lot of transactions, they've worked with a number of inspectors, they can usually recommend an inspecting company that does a really good job. And that truly is the best way. If you don't have an agent that you trust, you can start looking at reviews. Get online and search Yelp and anywhere else, Google, where you can see the reviews, and seriously look at them, because the inspector you choose does matter. Just like the agent you choose matters, the inspector you choose matters big time. Because you don't want to walk in and find you have a lemon of a house and all these issues and 20 grand in repairs that you didn't know you had. So it's really important to find a good inspector. I highly recommend, if you have an agent that you trust, asking that agent who do they trust. Make sure it's an agent you trust. If it's some random guy you just happen to call because you got onto Zillow Realtor, or they happen to call you, you have no idea who they are. Now, if you don't know any agents, again, look at their reviews, and you can learn a lot about them through that. Okay, make sure you understand their reports. Ask them for a sample report, or go on their website and look at their checklist. Make sure you're satisfied with the things that they're checking, and that you understand the reports, and that you'll know what you're looking at when you get that report back. Make sure that you have an inspector willing to get very, very specific. There's 3 different types of inspectors out there, and everywhere in between. You have inspectors that are trying to please the agent. A lot of inspectors get their business through agent recommendations, right? So you have some inspectors that want their agent to be happy. Well, if they don't have a good, honest, ethical agent, that agent may just be wanting to close the deal. So they might want to work with an inspector that kind of brushes over things or glosses over things and won't tell you everything. And you definitely do not want that. So it goes back to, you need an agent you trust, and look at their reviews, and you need an inspector you trust. And it needs to be an inspector that will get specific and tell you the real story. The opposite end of the spectrum is you have agents that are just trying to please the buyer or make the buyer feel like they made a good decision in choosing them. That also is bad. Trying to just please the agent is bad. Trying to please the buyer is bad. Because I'll tell you how a lot of them please the buyer is they try to scare the buyer, because they literally, they can be real vague about things. Like I had an example, I had an inspector where they said gutters rusted through. To my clients, like, oh my gosh, I have to replace all the gutters. I'm like, I was in construction, so I'm like, you don't need to replace all your gutters. And so I got a hold of that inspector, and I was like, what are you talking about? I'm looking at these gutters, they're not rusted through. And he's like, well, I found one spot that might have been rusted through. I'm like, well, where's your pictures? He's like, well, I didn't want to get too specific for liability reasons. Basically, there's two reasons he didn't get specific. He wanted to make the buyer think, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I hired this inspector, I just saved myself $3,000. And they want to cover their butt sometimes. And so they stay vague. That way someone can't come back and say, hey, you didn't catch this. So you have the inspector that wants to please the agent, and you have the inspector that just wants to please the buyer and make that buyer think they made a good choice. Then you have the kind of inspector you should be going for. The inspector that will catch everything, or nobody catches everything, but is attempting to catch everything. They're notating everything. They're being very specific, taking pictures of every single problem or non-problem that they find. So the report is full of photos. If there's ever a problem, they have a picture of the problem. So you know exactly what it is, and they're very specific. So that's what you want to look for in a inspector. What's one of the other questions you had? So how much do they cost? They're anywhere between, now, I think they're all close to $300 to $500 now. There used to be some that were under $300, but I think most of them are $300 to $500. Most of them are really $300 to $400. But then you can tack on things like radon tests, lead-based paint tests, mold tests. I mean, there's the whole bunch of sewer line scoping. Or if you're in older homes before they had PVC pipe, you should get that. You should get your sewer scoped. And really, I mean, in any older house at all, why not do it? It costs you $100, $150, and you might find like a $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 problem. So add on some of those. It's well worth it. Even if you have to spend $500, $600 on an inspection, do it. And if you work with us, we guarantee your inspection if you use AmPro. So if you end up pulling out based on inspection, you won't lose your inspection money. Even if you even if you can't get your loan, and if you're using AmPro and working with us, then they cover your inspection costs. So you could save yourself $300 to $500 if you don't buy that house you did the inspection on. So just keep that in mind. How long does it take? It should be close to 3 hours. If they're not taking 2.5 to 3.5 hours, they're doing something wrong. If they're getting in and out of there in an hour and a half, 2 hours, something's wrong. If there's only one person, if there's two people, they can get through it in that time. But if there's one inspector in the house, it should be 2.5 plus, but usually it's closer to 3 hours. What are they looking for? So, I mean, everything. You just start from the roof down. They're doing a basic overview. Remember, they're experts in nothing. That sounds bad, but it's not meant to be bad. They're experts in nothing, though. They're not roofing experts, although they're pretty good at checking roofs. They're not plumbing experts. They're not electricians. They're not licensed plumbers. They're not licensed electricians. They're not licensed contractors. They're not licensed to deal with foundations. They're not engineers. They're there for a reasonable price to try to see potential problems. So they're going in on your roof. They're checking the attics for moisture, any moisture penetration to the roofs. They're checking plumbing. They're checking electric. They're checking your panel. They're looking at the foundation for anything obvious. They should be checking every outlet, every switch. They should be checking everything, but they're not licensed electricians or licensed plumbers, so they're not going to find everything that maybe a plumber or an electrician or somebody like that would, but a good inspector will still find 95% of it. And if there's something suspicious, they'll tell you, get a licensed electrician in here. Or I see that a lot in like electric panels. They're looking at a panel, there's something that they say doesn't look right, you recommend you get an electrician. And foundations, that's another big one. Recommend you get a foundation expert to look at this, or an engineer to look at it. So anyway, there's basically the start of the roof, and they go work all the way down to the foundation, and they're looking over everything. And like I said, they can go in there and do extra tests if you want to do that. What does it not include? Typically, they're not. Sometimes they'll talk about trees that are overhanging. That might be a problem, but they're not looking at your shrubs, trees, lawns, typically not sprinkler systems either. And that's that's one thing that buyers don't know is they're not turning on sprinkler systems. If it's under 50 degrees, I think, or maybe it's 60 degrees, they're not checking the AC either. If it's warm enough to turn it on, they'll check the AC, but a lot of times it's not, depending on the time of year. So they're sometimes looking at drainage. They'll look at drainage right around the house. So if it's clearly sloping in towards the house, they're gonna say something about that. But that's not something, they're not checking the whole property for that. Swimming pool equipment, they're not checking that stuff. Outdoor fireplaces and all that, they're not typically checking that. Trying to think of anything else. They're not looking, sometimes if it's inside, they'll note if there's like mouse droppings and stuff, but they're not looking for those kind of issues. They're not looking for like termites or carpenter ants or that kind of stuff. Even though we don't typically have a problem in Colorado Springs with mold or termites or that kind of stuff because we're pretty dry, downtown you do find it once in a while. So anywhere in those older parts of town, for some odd reason, that area you'll occasionally find termites. So I'm trying to think of what else. When do you get the report? Typically they'll get it to you by the next day. That's when you normally should expect to get that report. Almost all of them now are online interactive reports where you can click through, open up, menus and look at all the different items that they looked at. So most of the time now they're interactive and online. And what do you do with the report? You use it to decide whether you want to move forward. If it's nothing major and it's kind of in the ballpark of what you were thinking, then typically now you've had confirmed that your thoughts on the condition of the house were accurate and you move forward with buying it. If there's way more than you thought, then you talk to the seller about what you're going to do. Are they going to fix it? Are they going to compensate you for it? What are they going to do? That is another reason it's really good to have seriously good agents because, man, if you have an agent that knows how to negotiate, they're going to be really good at getting the seller to see the logic in fixing your stuff. If they're not good, then you may end up paying thousands of dollars out of your own pocket later because your agent couldn't negotiate that for you. And I'm telling you, it makes a massive difference. The agent you choose matters, the inspection you choose matters, the inspector you choose matters, and those negotiation skills are huge, huge, huge. So if you have an agent, take that back to your agent, go over it with your agent, and together you guys decide which things you want the seller to take care of, which things you're willing to look past. And in this market, a lot of times you're looking past everything because there's multiple offers out there and backup offers and that kind of stuff. But that's what you got to decide with your agent. I think that's it. If you have anything else, feel free to post any questions you have about this on whether you're looking on YouTube or Facebook or whatever it is. Post your questions and I'll definitely respond to them. All right, hope you have a great day.